When I woke up in the morning, the nurse checked me again and I was still 2 centimeters dilated. So the doctor read my file and he's like, you've been here for too long, you need to have given birth by now, and it's gonna cause the baby to die because the baby's in distress. Because if I'm feeling this much pain without being induced, what's gonna happen when I get induced? Hi everyone, my name is Ramembedzi and I am a wife. I'm a mother of 2 boys, and today I'm going to be telling you guys my birth story, my vaginal birth story at a government hospital. By the way, I was induced and I was also moved from one hospital to the other due to complications. So how I found out that I was pregnant, backstory, I come from Limpopo, and at the time I was working in Midrand and I was also living in Midrand. This was 2015. So long weekend, I went home, and as per usual, before I come back this side, I usually pass by my grandmother's house for prayers. So this is my late grandmother, may her beautiful soul rest in peace. So I go to her house, and as usual, we're praying, and then this time she held my hand and drew me closer to her. She put me on her lap, and then she put one hand on my tummy, on my belly, and I was like, what is she doing? So she began to pray for me. The prayer was so intense, I was so confused. Anyways, I got back this side, and like I said, I worked in Midrand and I lived in Midrand, literally 5 to 10 minutes walk. So I used to walk to work, and yeah, so I was very fit and very healthy, and like I literally was a little athlete. I used to run like 10Ks, 20Ks. I was so fit. So walking to work and coming back, it was not an issue, but this time around I felt so tired every time I walked to work. Literally, there was one stop between my place and work. I would always stop by the bus stop to rest, and I would like literally gasp for air, and I didn't understand what was happening. So I started getting nauseous as well. I started getting so irritated and annoyed by a lot of things, which is so unlike me because I'm a very bubbly and happy person. And then I told one of my colleagues, she has a baby, and I told her like how I'm feeling, and then she said to me that you might be pregnant, and I laughed it off. I was like, no, it can't be possible. That very same night when I got back from work tired, I slept off. I usually don't sleep when I come back to work. I run, make dinner, do something active, you know. So that particular night I came back home, I fell asleep, I woke up and I was just feeling so tired and so drained. So I started noticing that my breasts are getting so big. It was such a weird look because I've never had big boobs. So I now thought about what my colleague was saying, that I might be pregnant. So the following day I decided to go to Clicks and get a pregnancy test. So came home, I slept off, and then I woke up around 9 p.m. and then I took the test, and I actually thought I'm gonna take the test, leave it in the bathroom, and then proceed to make supper because I hadn't eaten that day. So just after I peed on the stick, I put it on the toilet, and before I could look away, there were 2 very visible dark lines, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? I had to read the pamphlet again, and it was saying you're pregnant. I was so shocked. I remember at that moment I was feeling so scared. I was terrified. I remember I was feeling cold and hot at the same time. It was just the weirdest feeling ever, and I just remember going to the bedroom and I started crying. I started crying so much, and then I sent the pregnancy test stick to my boyfriend, my partner. He's like, what? I'm like, yep, I'm pregnant. And he tried to call me. He lived a little bit far from me, about like 30 minutes drive. So he tried to call me. I didn't answer the phone because I was crying. I couldn't even breathe. So that same night he came to my place, and before we could jump into conclusion and plan everything, I actually told him, you know what, let's go to the doctor first tomorrow. I want to confirm and make sure that I am really pregnant. And when I got to the doctor, they did the pee test like I did at home. So I actually thought it wasn't accurate, and then the doctor also referred me to Lancet Laboratories. So I went there there and they did the test to show or to see how far I am, because the doctor that I went to was not a gynae, it was just a normal GP. So I went to Lancet, did the test, and then a couple of days or a week later I got the results and I was 6 weeks pregnant. I was so shocked. Okay, so yeah, that's how I found out that I was pregnant. So the first person I told was my friend, because the day that I found out was my birthday, and she was as shocked as I was. She didn't even know what to say. She didn't even have words at the time. It was such a big shock. And then I told my sister as well, my older sister Bertha, and she was a little bit disappointed, but she also was very supportive. She was like literally calling me every day to check if I'm okay. And obviously my partner, I told him, and then parents. So just before I was 3 months pregnant, I decided I should go home and tell my parents, as terrified as I was. So I got home on the weekend, and then on Saturday night I told my mom just to wait before she goes to bed. I want to talk to her alone. And then we were sitting at the dining table, I still remember, and I was so nervous to say anything, and she's just like, what do you want to tell me? As I was busy murmuring and strategizing on how I'm going to tell her, she then told me that, do you want to tell me that you're pregnant? I was so shocked. I'm like, how do you know? She's like, no, I know. I was just waiting for you to tell me. And I guess her mother told her, my granny told her. So that's how I told my mom. She was a little bit disappointed, of course, as expected, but she came around. So I think that same evening she told my dad, because I remember the following day, which was Sunday, I was going to do my hair early in the morning before church, and he's the one that actually took me there to the salon. He was very excited. He was telling me jokes in the car, like I think he was okay with it. So later I then told my friends, my very close friends, and they were so excited. They were shocked, but at the same time they were very excited for me, and they just couldn't wait to meet my little one. So with my pregnancy journey, first of all, I didn't have a medical aid. I had just gotten off my dad's medical aid. So we decided that I'm going to give birth at Netcare in Pretoria. So I started going to the gynae there at Netcare, and everything was going well. But she did mention that I might give birth via C-section, because there was a little complications with my pregnancy, which didn't make sense to me because I was okay. So a very close family friend of mine actually advised me to rather go to the government clinic and stop wasting money on gynecologists, because it was very expensive, cash, and also going to give birth at the hospital without a medical aid is extremely expensive. So she referred me to a specific hospital in Pretoria, that this hospital is very good. The nurses are very kind, and the hospitality is like on point, and they treat patients very well, because that's one of the things I was worried about, because I've heard so many horror stories about government hospitals. So I decided, let me give it a shot. So I started going to the clinic, to the government clinic. I got a letter from my gynae, and then a transfer letter from my gynae. Then I started going to the clinic, and I think I was around 7 months pregnant, if I'm not mistaken. And the nurses were kind, to be honest. They were not rude. They did all the medical checks on a pregnant woman. I had no issues at all. And the only issue I have with the government clinic is the queue. Oh my goodness, it was so long. So I'd actually have my husband, my boyfriend at that time, stand in the queue for me. And then when I'm about to get to the finish line, he will then call me, and then I'll come inside and stand in the queue. But otherwise, I didn't have any complaints. And yeah, just my pregnancy journey, I didn't have any complications. I had actually a very beautiful pregnancy. I was glowing. I was just looking so good. I remember when I was like 6-7 months pregnant, people still couldn't see that I'm pregnant unless I tell them, okay? The only thing that I craved for was ice cubes and ice. So I was always having ice, and yeah, nothing major to be honest. So my EDD, my estimated date of delivery, was the 15th of March, according to the gynecologist and the clinic. So on the 15th of March 2016, I wasn't feeling any contractions, so I told my husband that we should go to game. I wanted to get something. I can't remember what I wanted to get, but we went to game at the mall. So as I'm walking, I would pause whenever I'm feeling Braxton Hicks. So those are like forced contraction, or rather preparing your body or yourself for the real contractions. So I was having those mild ones, and they were a little bit uncomfortable, but not bad at all. And then I was having them throughout the day, and then that same evening on the 15th of March, I started having contractions, and they were a bit closer to each other than before. So I told my husband, you know what, I think I'm ready to give birth. I think it's time. Let's go to the hospital. So my husband and I took my hospital bags and we went to the hospital at Pretoria, Tshwane District Hospital. So when we got to the hospital, the receptionist directed me to the labor ward. So I went there, and the nurses told my boyfriend to wait outside just by the door. And I went inside and I told them that I'm feeling contractions. And they actually didn't believe me because I didn't look, I wasn't dramatic as expected, I guess. So, and then one of the nurses said, no, it's fine, just go and lie down on the bed, I'll come and check you. She was also very like skeptical. So when she came to check me, she realized that, no man, this girl is in labor, and I was 2 centimeters dilated. And then she said, they're going to admit me because I'm in labor, and very soon that night or in the morning I might give birth. So I told my boyfriend and I asked if he can come in, and obviously he can't. There's a whole lot of pregnant women inside there, so that are waiting to deliver, and they were just walking up and down. And at first I didn't understand, why is everybody walking up and down? And actually that's and later the nurse told me that that's the way of inducing labor. So after they were done checking me, I had to also walk up and down to quicken my contractions. So I told my boyfriend that he can go home, then I'll call him when I'm about to go in labor. So he left, and then I stayed at the hospital walking up and down, and now and then the nurse will come and check me to see how far I am, and I was still 2 centimeters dilated. And as I was walking up and down, I was walking to the toilet. I felt like I wanted to pee, so as I was walking to the toilet, passing the nurse's table, my water broke. And I was so embarrassed because like the floor was wet, and one of the nurses actually said, no, don't worry, that's your water breaking, that means you're almost in labor. So I actually wanted to clean it up. She said, no, don't worry, we've got cleaners to clean it. So that was fine. So I slept, and then when I woke up in the morning, the nurse checked me again, and I was still 2 centimeters dilated, and a lot of women that I was walking up and down with had given birth, and I was starting to get a little bit worried and impatient on when am I going to give birth. And I could also hear women from the other room giving birth and screaming and hearing the babies cry, and I just couldn't wait for that. So then one of the nurses said to me that she's a bit worried about me because by now I should have given birth. Everybody that I was with had given birth except for me. So she now said that she's going to send me to the doctor in the morning at 8 o'clock. So the doctor can check me and see what's happening. So around 8 o'clock, she put me in a wheelchair and she wheeled me to what they call the kangaroo unit. I think it's the kangaroo unit at Tshwane District. That's like a baby clinic. So I went there, it was full. So she put me in a wheelchair, and when I asked, why are you putting me in a wheelchair, I can walk? She said, no, it's so that you can jump the queue. So when we got to the kangaroo unit, I went to see the doctor, and can I just mention how painful it is when the doctors or the nurses check how far you've dilated. So the doctor read my file, and he's like, you've been here for too long, you need to have given birth by now. So he said, I'm going to do something, it's going to be very painful, but it's going to quicken your delivery. I was brave, and I pulled my strength together. I closed my eyes, and he put his hand in. It was so painful. He put his hand inside, and it felt like it literally felt like he put his whole hand inside, and he was doing this like he was doing this inside me. It was very, very painful. And oh my goodness, it was so painful. I remember I screamed, and he's like, don't worry, after this you're going to give birth. So when he checked again, he said, you're actually now 3 centimeters dilated. It's going to go quicker. And I was bleeding. So he asked one of the nurses to take me to the waiting room there at the kangaroo unit. It was a very cute, beautiful room. I actually didn't feel like I was at the hospital anymore. It was so comfortable. Also, my boyfriend could join me in that waiting room. So we were there chilling together. And the whole day, basically, as the nurse would come and check how far I am, and I was just not dilating. I was still 3 centimeters dilated, literally the whole day. So that was the 16th of March. So they now took me back to the hospital, the Tshwane district. It's not too far because they literally wheeled me with a wheelchair to the Tshwane hospital. And when I got there, the nurses were still surprised that I haven't given birth. So they kept me there throughout the night, coming in to check how far I am, and I was still 3 centimeters dilated. And I remember how I was in so much pain, and the nurse was checking on the CTG scan, I think it's called, and she said that she can see that I'm having heavy contractions, but she's not understanding why I'm not dilating as expected. So she now came back, and then she told me that I should stop pushing the baby because I'm distressing the baby, and it's gonna cause the baby to die because the baby's in distress. Because what's happening is that when I'm feeling the pain, I push as if like I want to push the baby out, and when the baby is trying to come out, it can't come out because my cervix is not open, and that is distressing the baby. So I kept telling her that I'm not doing it on purpose. I don't know what, I couldn't control my body at the time. I just gave in to the pain basically, and my body was just doing what it was doing. But when she mentioned that I'm pushing and I'm gonna kill the baby, I got a little bit scared, and I started praying. And so I stayed there throughout the night. In the morning, another nurse came back again, and she said the same thing, that I'm pushing and I'm gonna hurt the baby. And I remember when she closed my curtain and she went around to the senior nurse, she told the senior nurse that this girl is going to kill the baby. This girl is going to kill the baby because she keeps pushing. And the nurse is like, no, let's rather take her to Steve Biko hospital. So the nurse came back and she told me that, you know what, you've been here for too long and we don't know what's happening with you. So we need to take you to Steve Biko hospital because right now you are pushing the baby, you are distressing the baby, and the baby might die. So she's like, so they might do a C-section when you get to Steve Biko. I remember I started praying and praying and praying because I really didn't want a C-section. But at that point, I also didn't mind because I just wanted to see my baby. I was really tired of the pain. And I could also hear my husband talking to the nurses from far, from the door, because he was not allowed to come in the maternity ward. A few minutes later, they came in, they transferred me from that bed to the wheeled bed, the ambulance bed. And then I remember because I was in so much pain, I literally blacked out from that point. And the next minute I am waking up and I'm at Steve Biko hospital, and I'm surrounded by student nurses and another senior elderly nurse. And can I just mention that lady was like an angel. I literally felt like I'm giving birth with my mom in the room. And there was another male doctor, a very big, tall guy, and he said, no, today you need to give birth. You've been here for far too long, you're going to give birth. So when the doctor left, the elderly nurse came to stand right next to me. She looked right into my eyes and she told me that, don't worry, today you're going to give birth, you're going to meet your baby. And she's like, everything's going to go well. Basically, she just encouraged me, and I remember I felt a bit encouraged, but I was still in so much pain. So they monitored me, and around 1 o'clock she came back again, and then she told me that you are still 3 centimeters dilated and we have other options. We can actually induce you to quicken your labor because your baby is sitting so well. The way he's positioned so well for you to push him out. And then I remember when I was pregnant, I read about being induced, and I remember how a lot of mothers said it's so painful. So I'm just thinking, if I'm feeling this much pain without being induced, what's going to happen when I get induced? I told the nurse, I'm like, you know what, I want to meet my baby, go ahead. So we prayed about it with my boyfriend, and the nurse came in. They put in a drip. It wasn't like an oral inducement or anything like that, so it was just a drip. And then I remember it was around 2:30. After they induced me, they strapped me up with those the hospital belt monitoring machine. So they just want to monitor the baby because the baby is now in distress and they really have to quicken my labor. So the nurse asked me to sleep on one side, which was very uncomfortable because I was having the most excruciating pain. My labor pains were so painful. I cannot even describe them. While I was sleeping on my side, I was feeling so much pain. And then I remember I told my boyfriend, I'm like, you know what, please leave, because I was just annoyed by him wanting to massage me, wanting to touch me, asking me if I'm okay. I was really annoyed. So I asked him, please leave, and then you'll come back when I'm about to give birth. I want to be alone. And then I remember when he left, I was in so much pain. I took my phone. I actually didn't want to tell anyone that I'm in labor because I wanted to surprise everybody with a picture. So because like the pain got real, I called my mom and I couldn't speak. So she's like, hello, and then I told her that I'm in labor. Sure, same time started praying praying with me and telling me, speaking life into my body. And after I hung up, like literally 5 minutes later, I literally felt like someone, I cannot even explain the pain. I felt like someone just went inside me and put a spear on my spine and stabbed me on my back. That's how much I was in pain. So luckily the nurse was close by, so when she came to check on me, she wanted to check how far I was, and then she said, oh my goodness, we need to call the doctor, and then she told all the student nurses to call the doctor, that the baby is here, we need to deliver this woman. The nurse quickly called my husband and he came in the room, and then the doctor came in and he looked at me. He said, we are not going to play. I'm not here to play with you. He was very strict. He's like, I'm not here to play with you. We are going to deliver this baby safely and you're going to do what I tell you to do. So the lady nurse came to stand on my one side, and then my husband was on the other side. Each one of them was holding my thigh, and my husband was literally holding my hand, and I could see he was a little bit terrified, but I honestly didn't care. And then the nurse was busy, trying to talk to me to come to breathe, and she told me that when you feel like you want to do number 2, then you can push. So whenever I felt like I want to do number 2, I would push, but then the other doctor would keep telling me, push. He was very harsh, but I guess that also helped me to push harder, because he kept telling me that if you don't push, you're gonna kill this baby. If you don't push, you really want to kill your baby. So I pushed so hard. Literally, I pushed with every strength inside of me. I remember I was like, this is the last push. Like, I can't, if the baby doesn't come out with this push, then I don't think it will ever come out. So I gathered all the strength and I pushed with all my power, with everything. But the baby didn't come out. So now the nurse, the doctor now told me that I'm going to leave you if you don't want to push, and that was 3 o'clock. I started pushing at 3 o'clock, by the way. The senior nurse on the side was just trying to motivate me, and she was being nice, and she told my husband to hold my thigh and hold my hand so tight, and she held my hand and my thigh so tight, and she asked me to push. And I remember I pushed so hard. And then I remember my husband saying, baby, you're doing so well. I can see the head. I could hear the student nurses also say, we can see the head. You're doing so well. And then I pushed and pushed. I think them saying they can see the head also motivated me to push even harder, even though I was so exhausted. I pushed and pushed, and then the baby came out. I remember when the head came out first, and now I think it was easy to push out the whole body. I felt so relieved. It was I've never felt so much peace in my life. I felt so peaceful after the baby came out. And I just remember when the doctor took him out, when the doctor held him and he started crying, like literally the whole world just froze. Like literally I felt like nobody else exists. It was just me and my son, like nobody else matters. It was just me and my baby. And when they put him on my chest, it felt so heavenly. I've never ever experienced, and I cannot even put it to words how I felt when they put him on my chest. It felt like, I can't explain it, guys. I was the most happiest woman in the world. My son, my whole being, my heart, the love of my life was literally on my chest. And the moment they put him on my chest, he stopped crying, and the connection was just instant. I fell in love with my baby, and from that day, me and him have been inseparable. Like it was the best feeling ever, and that's just how I pushed the baby. And also when the placenta came out, literally I didn't feel anything. When they were cleaning me up, I didn't feel anything. However, when they're taking the baby away from me to clean him up and all those procedures, they now had to stitch me because I had a tear. I remember when they started stitching me up, I was really over pain. I felt like I don't deserve going through any more pain than I already had gone through. So they stitched me up, and they didn't even numb me. I could feel every single stitch. It was so painful. So after they were done cleaning me up and all that, and cleaning my baby, and they checked everything, the nurse told me that I actually pushed for 45 minutes. So my baby was born at 2:45 p.m. I was so shocked because I felt like I only pushed for like 5 minutes, but in fact it was 45 minutes. So after they were done cleaning me up and everything, they took me and my son to the delivery room. So they put me in a wheelchair, and my boyfriend held all my bags and stuff to the recovery room. So when we got there, because it's a government hospital, it was not a private room. There were 3 other ladies. I was the 4th one, and I really couldn't wait to get home. I was over the hospital. I didn't want to see the nurses. I didn't want to see the doctor because I was so traumatized by everything and everyone around me at the hospital. So they said they're going to keep me overnight just to check me and check the baby if we're okay. And every now and then they would come and check us. And one thing that annoyed me the most is when they come to check your sugar levels. Literally, I felt like every 5 minutes they were coming to check my sugar levels. It was annoying, checking your temperature, just the pricking of the needle. For me, it was a lot. I really don't like needles. I think a lot of people don't like needles, so it was very daunting. So the nurses came later to actually help me to breastfeed. Luckily, I had a lot of milk, and breastfeeding also wasn't that painful. And thank God my baby latched immediately, so I didn't have any issues with my baby latching on my boob. It was very easy for him, and he was so hungry, I guess. And yeah, that's how I started breastfeeding. So the following day, my boyfriend was there, so he stayed with the baby while I go and freshen up and shower. And the doctor also came to just check and release me and discharged me from the hospital. So he checked my baby, checked me as well, and he said we are good to go. So yeah, that's how everything happened, and that was my birth story. Hi everyone, my name is Ayomide, and this is my miracle birth story.